Hey, welcome back to my SilverStripe with React tutorials. In this video, we're going to be going over installing Webpack so that we can bundle up all of our module code, and Babel so that we can be using the latest JavaScript syntax ES6. We're just going to start by running npm init, and that's going to automatically generate a package.json file. It'll ask you for some fields. You can mostly just hit enter through this. So package name, enter, version, description, all this is good. You can basically just keep hitting enter through this. If you'd like to add an author, go ahead. There we go. And that created our package JSON. Where is that? There we go. Right here. Now we're going to want to add node modules to our gitignore because that node modules folder will have every single module that we install, so it can get pretty massive and we don't want to commit that. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and actually install Webpack. So that's going to be npm I save dev Webpack and Webpack CLI. Okay, you can see now that our package JSON's dev dependencies got updated for Webpack and Webpack CLI. So now what we're going to do is install Babel. So that's going to be npm I save dev Babel Loader, Babel polyfill, and Babel core. Now that we have all of our dependencies installed, we're going to go ahead and create our entry point. So we're going to go into our terminal here and we're going to make a new directory. So it's going to be mkdir themes simple JavaScript, and then it's going to be React. Okay, and then we could arrow up to get most of that back, and we're going to say index.jsx. You can hit the home key to go to the front of this, and then we're going to say subl. This kind of depends on what text editor you're using, but this is going to create a new file called index.jsx in this directory here. Okay, so to test if ES6 is working, we're going to just create a simple arrow function. So we're going to say const cool equals parentheses arrow function here. We're just going to have it console log the word cool out. Okay? So now we're going to actually configure Webpack. So we're going to create a new file at the root of our project called webpack.config.js. So we're going to require a few things at the top of the file here. The first being the path. And then Webpack. And then we'll use path to get this entry file here. And then Webpack is our actual build tool. Now we're going to set our module.exports to an object. And then we're going to define a few properties that Webpack will use in here. The first of which is going to be called entry, and that's going to be set to an array. And our first element here is going to be the Babel polyfill. And then we're going to use the path module to define our entry point. So it's going to be path.resolve and then dir name with double underscores, and then the actual path. Okay, just like that. The next property is going to be the output, and we're going to set this to an object of its own. And the first property of that object is going to be the file name. and we're going to set that to JavaScript bundle.js. Next, we'll set the path for the output, and this will be path.resolve, another dir name, and then we'll just use the actual theme. We'll set the mode to development, and we'll set the module to an object. So we'll make a rules array, and this is just going to take one rule for now, and that's going to be in the form of an object. Now we want to test the files that are loaded and apply certain rules to them. So we do that with regular expressions. In this case, we are only loading a single JSX file, but we'll have regular expressions that will match Sass in the future. So it's going to be test, and then a new regular expression. It's going to be .jsx, and we're going to want to end with that, just like that. We'll also want to escape this dot here with a backslash, because a dot will just match anything in regex. So for JSX files, we're going to want to use a loader, and that loader is going to be the Babel Loader. Alright, so back in our package.json, we're going to want to define some new scripts to run. So we're going to define a build script, and we could just set that to Webpack, and then add a comma here. Now back in our terminal, we should be able to run that script. So that's going to be npm run build. And that's going to run Webpack, and you can see that it generated that new bundle file that came from this index. So in our main top level page.ss right here, we're going to want to include that new bundle. We can just copy this down. If you're using Sublime, you can hit Control-Shift-D, and that will copy a line down. And we want themed JavaScript, but we want bundle. So if we were to open our site's console, we don't have the cool message here, and that's because we're not actually calling that yet. So what we need to do is call this, but we would need to run another build, and that can get pretty tedious if we're constantly making changes to this. So we're going to define a new script in our package.json that's going to be called watch, and this will watch for files to be changed. So it's going to be Webpack, but with a option, and that option is going to be watch. So anytime we make a change to this file, it'll automatically run a build. So let's watch this happen. We're going to run that command. So that's npm run watch. Okay. And it should just run a build on its own. But if we were to run cool, or call that function, I mean, and then save, it should trigger another build. Now back in our browser, you can see that we have the message because we actually called the cool function. That cool function is an ES6 arrow function. We're going to be using a lot of that in React. So in the next video, we're going to be going over actually installing React and setting that up and pulling in components that we can import into the JSX file. So I'll catch you then.